Hi guys! Welcome to Class by Claire on YouTube. I'm so excited that you're here with us today learning how to cast on. Casting on is a really basic skill and it's something that you're going to need for every project that you decide to knit, no matter how simple it is or how advanced. For today's video, I'm going to be using Lion Brand Yarns Hometown USA in this light gray color. Alright guys, we're all set up here. I have my yarn and my needles all ready. So first thing that we're going to do for casting on is make a slip knot. So go ahead and open your yarn. Give yourself a few inches of room. Let's see where the beginning of this yarn is. Here we go. Okay, go ahead and give yourself about, I would say, a foot or two of yarn. Alright, so to make a slip knot, we're going to give ourselves about 6 or so inches from the tail end of your yarn. Right about that 6-inch mark, go ahead and take that yarn, loop it around your front 2 fingers. Keep going until it makes an X right here in between the 2 fingers. Now next we're going to reach into this hole between our index and second finger, like so, and grab that piece of yarn that we wrapped around. Pull that through, you'll see a loop start to form. Pull it until you get that knot right here. All right, so now as you can see, this is quite a big loop. It's gonna be too big to work with on our needles. So to tighten this up, we're gonna pull on the ball end of the yarn, pull gently until your loop is about this size or so. Now you can adjust this size later, so it's okay if it's not perfect. But this is what we call a slip knot. It's a very basic skill. It's something that you're going to need basically for every project that you ever start. So it's important to get this down. I know that it's quite tricky at first, so we're going to actually untie it. So just pull on that ball end of the yarn until it unravels. And let's just try it one more time. All right, so about 6 inches from the base, the tail end. Go ahead and wrap that around your front 2 fingers. Make an X, like so. Reach through that hole behind your index and second finger. Grab that piece of string, pull until you have a knot form. Good. All right, so as you can see, our loop is too big. We're gonna tug gently on that ball end of the yarn until our loop is about that size. All right, good. That's step 1. Slip knot is done. Okay, next thing that we're gonna do is take our needle and we're gonna loop this onto it. Now, this needle is gonna end up in our left hand, so it's important that the ball end of the yarn is towards you and the tail end of the yarn is facing out in front of you. This is important because, as you can tell, there's not enough yarn here to work with, to knit with. So we're really just gonna ignore this tail end for the whole project. So make sure that that ball end of the yarn is facing you. Okay, so tension is a pretty difficult thing to get used to when you're knitting, but it will come easily, I promise. So this here is a little bit loose. The way that I like to test this is I think that your slip knot should be able to move freely on your needle. So that's a check, that's good. But it should never fall off if you turn your needle upside down. So as you can see, this one's a little bit too loose right now. So I'm going to slip it back on the needle, and I'm just going to tug gently on that ball end of the yarn once again, just to tighten that slip knot up a little bit. Okay, now as you can see, it can still move freely, but if I turn it over, it's not going to fall off. All right, our slip knot is done and on our needle. So now it's time to cast on. Take that right hand needle and enter into that stitch, the front part of it, until our right hand needle is going to be actually below that left hand needle. Let's try that one more time. You're just going to simply enter into that slip knot like so until your right hand needle emerges under your left hand. Good. Okay, now we're going to take that ball end of the string, making sure that you're not working with the tail end because, as we already mentioned, there's definitely not enough yarn here to work with. So make sure you're just ignoring that. All right, pull from the ball end of the string. Now we're going to wrap it around this right hand needle. It's important to go the right way. So we're gonna go towards our working desk or whatever you're working on. We're gonna go down towards that and around, bringing that string towards you. It's gonna kind of lock into place here in between that right hand and left hand needle. Let's try that one more time. This is a really, really common move. It's what you're gonna use every time you knit a stitch or cast it on, so we gotta get used to that. So once again, take that ball end of the yarn, wrap it around that right hand needle, going down towards your working desk, around up towards you, and pulling it into place in between that right and left hand needle. Good. Okay, so now this is, I think, the tricky part, but it's different for everyone. So we're gonna slowly guide this right hand needle. I tend to use my left index finger just to make sure that it's guided right and gently. So we're gonna guide this right hand needle, and it's gonna come under that left hand needle, and it's gonna emerge right through that hole there. Now, it's important that when your needle, your right hand needle, emerges on top, you can see a visible stitch right here. This is what's gonna end up as our second stitch. So I'm gonna show you that one more time because I do think it can be a little bit complicated at first. So we wrapped our yarn around our needles. All right, I tend to hold my ball end of the yarn like so, just to keep it taut in place, but that's also really up to the knitter and what's comfortable for them. So once again, we're gonna guide this right hand needle under like so, and it's gonna pop through that hole right there. Push that gently through. You should see that second stitch emerge. All right. So now, as you can see, if you've done it right, when you tug on this needle, that yarn should move freely. It should really expand that stitch as much as you want, really. Now, we don't want it that big, so I'm gonna pull that base end of the yarn tight a little bit. If your knitting ever feels too loose, you can usually just tug on this gently and it will tighten that right up. Okay, so now, next step, we gotta get this stitch onto that left-hand needle. So to do so, I'm gonna give myself a little bit more string to work with. So I'm gonna tug gently on that. There we go. Okay, so now instead of just slipping it on like that, that's not what we're gonna do. That will not work. So make sure that when you slip it on, you take that left-hand needle and actually go under the stitch like so. Once it's on that left-hand needle, you can release the right-hand needle and you can tug this a little bit if it feels too loose. All right, you just cast it on your first stitch. We now have 2 stitches on the needle, so let's go ahead and do a third. All right, we're gonna do the same thing. So go into that second stitch, like so, making sure that your right-hand needle emerges under that left-hand needle. We're gonna take that ball end of the yarn, wrap it around that right-hand needle, going below it towards your working desk, back up towards you, and push it into place right in between that right and left hand needle. Okay, now once that ball end of the yarn is in place, we're gonna slowly guide that right hand needle, bring it through under that left needle, and push it through that hole like so. We're gonna see that third stitch emerge onto that right hand needle. That means you're doing something right. So go ahead and tug, give yourself a little bit of room. Okay, now we're gonna put our right hand needle back under our left hand needle. And remember, we're gonna take our left hand needle and actually go under the stitch to slide it back on to the left hand needle. All right, there we go, we have 3 stitches. Let's go ahead and do 2 more. So we're gonna go into that third stitch like so. Then we're gonna take that ball end of the yarn, wrap it around right hand needle, bring it in towards you, lock it into place, and now we're going to slowly guide that right hand needle under the left hand needle and push it through until you see that stitch. All right, we're going to give ourselves a little bit more yarn to work with here, and then we're going to switch the needles. So we have our right hand needle under the left hand needle now. All right, good. Now we're going to make sure we go under this stitch like so, and then once it's on that left hand needle, go ahead and release your right hand needle. So once again, for tightness, like we mentioned earlier, it should be able to move pretty freely on this needle, but you don't want it to fall off the needle when you turn it upside down and give it a shake. All right, so our tightness is pretty good right now. I think that this is kind of the hardest thing to get used to if you're a new knitter. A new knitter, but it does get easier with time, I promise, and you will get used to what works for you. All right, let's go into that fourth stitch, like so. Our right hand needle is emerging under that left hand needle. Taking the ball end of the yarn, we're gonna go towards our working desk, bring it around the right hand needle and back towards us in between the right and left hand needle. Okay, now we're gonna grab this yarn. Well, I like to grab the yarn, but it's different for everyone. And we're gonna slowly guide that right hand needle under the left hand needle and through that hole right there, seeing that fifth stitch emerge on that right needle. All right, we're gonna give ourselves a little bit of room on the yarn. We're gonna switch so that our left hand needle is above the right hand needle now, and we're gonna make sure we go under that stitch, transfer it onto that left hand needle. You can move it around so that you're comfortable, and then you can tug if it's a little bit loose. All right, now we have 5 stitches. All right, so I have all 15 stitches on my needles. I've casted them all on the same exact way. And now you have your first row of casted on stitches. Congratulations, you've cast it on for a first project. Thank you guys so much for checking out our video on how to cast on. I hope it was very helpful. If you have any unanswered questions, comment them down below and I will definitely get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you guys. See you soon.